Thank you for watching. My name is Glenn Morgan, and this is We the Govern. Now, today we're going to be digging into just some of the prep stories that have to do more with the legislative session coming up in January of next year in Washington State. And the story that I think got less attention than it should have is the story here from the Washington State Standard. I'll link to it down below. Basically, this came out just a couple days ago talking about how the money crunch in Washington State government tax receipts, that it's going to put a kibosh on Washington State lawmakers' wish lists, which really what we're talking about here are Democrats in the Washington State legislature who don't believe the world holds enough money to actually fund all of their dreams and schemes with your tax dollars. And of course, this just reminds us the famous quote that was attributed to Margaret Thatcher: the problem with socialism is that eventually you run out of other people's money. Now, if you haven't hit the like and subscribe button down below, please do that at your earliest convenience. The more you share these videos with others, the wider the audience for our stories become, and I guarantee that the political class really doesn't want you to see stories like this. So please share these far and wide. Now, of course, many people are waking up to realizing the fact, especially after the recent series of ridiculous and absurd tax increases that the Washington State legislature imposed earlier this year. Now, suddenly, many of these people are realizing, wait a second, I don't have much left after they've taken those taxes through. On top of that, Bob Ferguson's pretty proud that he's passed every single tax that lands on his desk. And of course, it still isn't enough to cover the budget that they just passed a few months ago. And that isn't making him very happy either. And this is, of course, translating into the fact that they are running out of money, and it's far worse than they've represented. Probably this is also partially because you have the Office of Financial Management, not exactly the most competent crew in Washington State government, and it's been eroded over time. People who believe in math are largely starting to disappear from that agency. And of course, this is the same agency that just spent $752 million on a software upgrade program that won't work when they're all done, assuming they ever finish it. So we don't have the world's greatest geniuses running Washington State government, and it just seems to keep getting worse. But this story at least illustrates, I believe, and I'm very glad they at least published a story like this, talking about how there's just going to have to be some adults left somewhere in Olympia to tell them that this is going to change. Very specifically, as quoted in this article, was June Robinson, who's a Democrat senator from Everett. She's on the Ways and Means Committee. So essentially, to whatever degree the Democrats in the legislature are actually going to do their job and write the budget, which is in theory what they're supposed to do, it's actually going to be in Senator Robinson's court to do so. Now, the way they're typically doing it is they let the governor write the budget in December, and then they modify it from there. It's just easier. You don't have to be quite as lazy. And that's basically what they're going to probably do again this year. Her quote was, "We don't have money to pay for what is needed, let alone new spending that members might request." Now, there's other great quotes in there. You can read the article, and I'll link to it down below. But essentially, she's just saying that we don't have the ability to throw a lot of stuff into this budget and add more things during the short session coming up in 2026. Part of this is because of another article that they wrote here a while ago, widely published a few months ago, that projected tax revenues in Washington State are dropping way below what they had forecast, at least $500 million. And the truth is, it's probably going to become more like $1 billion by the time we finally see where these tax returns are coming. In no small part, this is partially because of the layoffs of big businesses. This is partially because of just crazy projections on tax returns that they thought they would get from some of these new dumb taxes that they passed. And of course, they didn't collect the amounts that they projected because we've hit the Lafleur curve and it's starting to fall off a cliff, and they don't get the money that they said they were going to get. Now, this makes leftists and Democrats particularly angry because they've been living in a bubble for so long in Olympia where we've just had lots of revenue coming in, lots of tax dollars coming in, even without proposing new taxes, simply as a function of a growing tech environment and basically a friendly environment to locate businesses until these guys have gotten in charge. Now it's getting worse. So they're not happy. And part of the reason why they're not happy is they've been partying forever, for literally over about 12, 13 years now, where every single cycle, no matter what happens, they always have this rapid increase in the budget. So what would happen is they would lay out a budget one year, and then lo and behold, the revenue, the tax returns, would actually be much higher than they'd projected. So the next legislative session, they could come back, and it was Christmas all over again. They could have giveaways and kickbacks to more of their insiders and NGOs and people that can help them on their political campaigns. And this is what they've been doing now for so long that there's very few legislators left in Olympia that even know what it's like to do a budget cut, which is what it looks like they're going to have to do coming up in the next session, at least a budget cut of some kind. So that's why nobody likes stopping the party, and nobody wants to accept, if you're on the Democrat Party side, that there just simply isn't going to be enough money left for all of your goofy, pointless, and wasteful grants. And so a lot of their supporters are getting very angry that they don't have access to the free taxpayer cash that they've had so easily in the past. Now, don't get me wrong, they're still squandering a large percentage of your taxpayer dollars on lots of stupid stuff. These are politicians, they're Democrats, and we live in Washington State. We have clowns and crooks running government. And so, of course, they're still wasting all your money, or a good percentage of it, doing lots of stupid things, and they're kicking a lot of that money out to their friends. But the volume is actually starting to get constrained, and this is when people start to panic, and that's what I believe we're seeing right now. Now, part of this is also, notice there were some articles a little while ago, just over the last few days, indicating that the NGO world in America is actually having mass layoffs. They actually surged 419% just this year alone compared to last year. It's kind of a big deal, mostly because the feds are starting to cut off totally wasteful government entities like USAID and other kickback schemes, and they're digging out a lot of fraud and waste that involves the NGOs all around the country, and that includes in Washington State. One of the good quotes from this article was basically, when you shine a light on $1 billion NGO networks, they scramble, and we're seeing the panic unfold in real time. Burner phones, law firms, and retreat statements. And that also means there just simply isn't enough money to keep the same operation going. So a lot of these, basically, they're just thinly veiled fronts for political action groups. They're having lots of problems right now. Now, obviously, you're going to have a lot of people throwing fits, getting angry about it, going out and making a scene, blaming Donald Trump, whatever it is they want to do. But I don't think they can stop the train that's eventually coming down the tracks, which is that there's just going to be less money out there, and they're going to have to deal with it. Now, in Washington State, we still have a very corrupt governor who, regardless of what he says, he's obviously pathological. He'll lie about whatever he has to. He'll bribe dead people to get elected. He'll do whatever he has to do. But it doesn't make it fun for him because he's got some problems. It's not what he was signing up for. He was assuming that the endless gravy train that we've been experiencing in our state was going to last forever. And now it looks like it's not going to happen. Now, if he was even capable of some self-reflection, maybe he would look back and say, maybe it wasn't a great idea to squander literally every penny we had and destroy the business environment in Washington State. But it's probably a little too late for that, and these guys usually don't have much self-reflection. But we're in the situation, and we have to deal with it now. Now, there's plenty of people out there that are probably having a few second doubts about maybe these guys really aren't the best guys to be running the state of Washington. Not when they look at whatever's left in their wallet after these guys have taken it for any and every possible taxing excuse they can find. And of course, the other problem is that you have the crazies inside the Democrat Party who basically want everything no matter what. Again, this is a distributed cost, concentrated benefits problem where these guys down here who run the Democrat Party or their NGO networks, they're pretty mad that they aren't going to get everything that they want. And so expect to see lots of fits, lots of drama, lots of meltdowns, and lots of silly virtue signaling bills when we go into the legislative session next year. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. There isn't enough money to cover all the dreams and schemes. They can't cover every single con group that they have out there, and all of these grifting operations, many of them are just going to have to fold. Only the most politically connected grifting operations are going to survive over the next couple legislative sessions. And we're still spending more money than we did last year, but most of that money was actually diverted to union salaries for government workers. So they didn't really get the whole big expansion of government that they were hoping to get. And of course, the capital gains tax that they had promised to get so much money from ended up chasing the wealthy people who could pay it, like Jeff Bezos, who conveniently moved to Florida so that he didn't have to pay it. This is what's happening. This is what's going on. There isn't enough money to keep the party going. The Democrats are starting to wake up to this reality, and I'm sure it's not happy days for them at this point in time. They can always blame Trump, and that's probably their default position, but that's what we're going into looking at 2026. So I hope that this helps give you kind of some perspective of what I think is going on out there. And I do encourage everybody, if you want to fix what's broken, you got to get engaged. You have to be involved. You have to be willing to show up. Because if you don't show up, it's these goofy guys that we see in government today that end up taking over and ruining everything. Because that's what happens. If you don't show up, you can't make an impact. Because, as I've always said, the future belongs to those who show up.